Nevesian and Kittitian are not demonyms that roll off the tongue as readily as Canadian or American. But when you're from the two-island nation of Nevis and St. Kitts, that's what you call yourself. Here with us in studio is a North American guest to talk about owning one's own identity while crossing boundaries and cultures. Dr. Elysia James took time out from her bustling hospital duties to join us at Feel Like You Belong. Elysia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here to get to talk to you.
So you are Canadian by birth, but Nevesian by ancestry. Can you talk about that a little bit?
And so I was born in Ajax, Ontario, so I'm Canadian through and through. I love snow. But my family, their ancestry is from Nevis and St. Kitts in the Caribbean.
Okay. Primarily Nevis then?
Yes, primarily Nevis. That's
Okay.
what we claim.
Now, I understand that you have to sort of, you're together as two islands in
Right,
one
but
country.
you stake your claim.
Okay, so is there sort of like bantering like MSU, U of M, or?
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So when did your family, so your parents or grandparents, who moved to Canada?
My parents.
Okay.
My parents. At a younger age, they both immigrated to Canada.
Okay. What's the motivation for leaving a beautiful country?
Opportunities, and on a larger scale, and to be able to provide that for your children or future generations.
Okay. So how much family do you have living in Ontario now?
It's hard to say because my parents both come from relatively large families, and we're spread not only across Canada but across the US, the UK, and of course still family members who reside in the Caribbean.
Okay, okay. So during your day job, you work at Spectrum Health.
Yes.
And you have training in neurology. Can you talk about what you do during the day?
So during the day, what do I do during the day? So during the day, my formal training was in both neurology and neurocritical care. And so my job is the intersect between neurology and, unfortunately, medical disasters that require high levels of support, meaning a breathing machine, bigger IVs or central venous access, hemodynamic support, medications that require close monitoring, all in the context of having an underlying neurological problem.
What drew you into that subspecialty?
I love the brain. I love how the body is wired, the electrical, if you will, wiring of the body to be able to move, process thought, take in your stimulus around your environment. I loved that, and I loved how science was on the forefront of trying to determine how the brain moves, works, and I wanted to be a part of that. The critical care aspect was more geared toward trying to help families and help patients during the worst times of their life, especially in terms of a new neurological disease or finding. And for that specific group, they can't speak for themselves, especially if it's the part of the brain that's affected, that affects speech or being able to move. They can't be their own advocate. So as a medical professional or as their physician, it really was important to me to advocate for this specific group of patients and their family.
So growing up as a young student, did you always know you wanted to work in the medical field?
Yes.
Very early. Are there other family members who did this, or?
My family does a number of different things. So we have people who were nurses, and not just my family. So my immediate family did mostly business, but then I had extended family, and by extended family I mean cousins, family friends, other relatives who did things like nursing, and we had church members who were nurses, so I was highly impacted by them. But it was mostly my interest in science and learning that really prompted or pushed my drive to get into medicine, and also a real desire to help. I really, from an early age, wanted to help make things better, and medicine is just one of those things that do that. So.
Sure. And you talked about working with people at very vulnerable moments of their lives, and so I can understand how that would be really fulfilling, but I can understand how that'd be really stressful too.
It can be taxing. It's taxing, but you surround yourself. The people who are drawn to doing this work are also drawn to creating and making a team and making a sense of community and family within that context. And so I've been fortunate that through medical school, through residency, through my fellowship training, to be, and now in this new context and job now, to be surrounded by people who are all very passionate about their work, passionate about the patients they care for, and over time become more and more passionate about each other and really cementing that sense of community.
Sure.
So that takes the edge off.
It makes you feel less alone and out on an island if you really remember
Right.
this is a team-based
Right.
occupation.
Right, you really have to approach it as a team, multi and interdisciplinary approach to this very complex patient population. You can't go it alone.
Sure. You work some long hours. The work is stressful, as we said. And what really caught my attention is when we talked earlier is you do stress relief by a couple of outside activities, running, which some people would understand, and kickboxing.
Yes.
Talk about that.
So kickboxing was a recent addition to things I do to alleviate stress. And one of the things that attracted me to coming to Grand Rapids was the amount of outdoor involvement that people have. Running is a 24-hour-a-day, all-season event here. And it's cool to be able to be a part of a community that values being outside and enjoying nature and being active. Kickboxing was almost a fluke. I was walking by the studio where I now go and enjoy doing the activity, and the sign was up and bags were out, and there's an open window. It was almost like Christmas in a candy store. So I'm like, you can legally allow me to hit things without, and I can pay for this. So.
And people won't have a bad opinion of you.
Right, and no one will get hurt. And I, will become more fit. It just so many advantages, and it's been great. And there's again another sense of community there because the same groups of people who gather to do that will typically like to run or have certain interests that all fall in line with each other. So it's been great, and it's been great being able to encourage my friends and other colleagues to join me. So it's one more activity that, my schedule is crazy. As you can imagine, the rest of my colleagues, their schedules are equally as demanding. So it's nice to be able to carve some time apart to spend time together outside of what we do at work.
The rigors of work, and,
Right.
and really reinforces this sense of community.
Yeah.
For all of you. That's great. About 25% of the physicians in the United States are IMGs, International Medical Graduates. They're born and trained originally outside the U.S., living and practicing now in the United States. The United States needs these doctors because we have a physician shortage. On the other hand, it's not easy to come here and practice. They're all credentialing, there's visas. Talk about some of the difficulties that you had in coming here.
On my hand, compared to some of my colleagues, I'm in a strange space. So on one hand, my training was all done here. So I went to medical school at Wayne State, did my residency at the University of Toledo in Ohio, and then completed my fellowship at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit. So I had the advantage of having all my training in terms of credentialing and board certification. It all happened
In
here.
the States. Huh?
Right, so I didn't have that additional load of trying to prove or bring over documentation of me working here. On the other hand, all of the difficulties of coming from another country accompanied me. And it's a country that people tend to forget almost is a different country than the States because we're such close neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
There's people tend to blow off sometimes some of the differences that really do exist. And so that's been difficult in terms of navigating that space and in terms of just, again, creating that sense of community and feeling at home in a sometimes very different environment. And it speaks to even what's happening right now in the current political system and the race and what's going on. Again, for politics at home are a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And just adjusting to what that's like here has been, you have to navigate through that space. It's a strange but interesting place to be.
Yeah, and my sense of the national dialogue in Canada, it in general seems a little bit more civil in terms of, the topics of both race and ethnicity in Canada. And I know that Canada is a very welcoming country to immigrants and has, you know, much more flexible immigration policies and whole systems around welcoming newcomers and integrating them into Canadian life.
And again, that's what makes this space, so when I say interesting, I don't mean to be sarcastic, I really mean that it's interesting. Because the discussion or conversation regarding race and ethnicity at home, although it's civil, it's still there and it needs to be had. And what ends up happening in a lot of cases is a discussion just gets maybe swept under the covers or pushed away because it's unpleasant, especially in more professional circles. Here, with things being a little more polarized, it's easier to push the discussion forward, although it is unpleasant, but it's still one that needs to be had, and you can find groups that really help push the agenda, push the issue. Where it becomes uncomfortable is that, again, it's not necessarily my country, right? So in terms of voting, being a someone who's an immigrant, I don't, or under my current visa obligations, I'm unable to vote or participate in the political process here. So while I may have very strong opinions about what happens here because I live here, I am not able to exercise my opinions through my vote like I would be able to do at home.
Sure, sure. We were talking earlier about the fact that you are from Canada, and you identify, I think, sort of culturally, nationally, as Caribbean Canadian. Is that accurate?
More and more, if you had asked me back in high school, I would have said yes. But the older I get, the more I realize it's important for me to identify with home. And home for me is Canada. My nationality, what I practice, what my beliefs are, my ethnicity, yes, I agree, is very Caribbean. And anybody who knows me closely would know that.
And when you go back, it feels good.
Right, of course. Like there's, you can't argue with beautiful sunshine,
And you take off
beautiful
your parka
beach,
too.
right? Beautiful beaches, beautiful family. Like you can't argue with that. So of course, it feels like home. Going to Nevis feels like home, but Canada is my home, and it's important. It's become more important to me. And again, I don't know if it's a matter of just living longer or what it is, but it's become more and more important to me to identify myself as Canadian because I'm not necessarily accepted as Canadian on first glance, which is, again, has its own set of difficulties.
And we were talking about that when you're in Detroit. You know, the majority population in Detroit is African American. So here you come walking into an exam room or walking down a corridor, and people say, "Oh, this woman is African American."
Until I open my mouth, and then I'm from any other country but Canada. And what's difficult is that that happens even at home. So depending on where I am in Canada, I'm from anywhere else but Canada. And, you know, over time, it's like, but this is who I am, this is where I'm from, this is what I identify with. It makes sense for me to be in this space. Why is that not readily acknowledged? And so for me, it's very important to be able to identify myself as Canadian and be able to state with certainty that, yes, this is my home, this is where I'm from, and this is the space in where I sit.
Was there a different sense of welcome or unwelcome when people realized, oh, you're not like a native Detroiter, or, you know, you understand what I mean?
Not unwelcome, and again, it depended on the audience. So in certain groups or certain audiences, they didn't care where I was from. It was just, you know,
they need your
I'm one
help.
more cool. Well, at work, it's always they need your help. But I mean, socially, in certain audiences, you know, I'm one more cool black chick. So it's like, yay. So wherever you're from, it didn't really matter. In different audiences, there tended to be not a sense of unwelcome, but more discomfort. Because again, it's uncomfortable if you've made a mistake making inferences as to where someone's from based on their appearance or how they speak or how they comport themselves. So then you automatically feel bad that, oh, I've said something that's uncomfortable, so now I feel uncomfortable, and now there's this whole awkward moment because now am I this, am I that? And it's just, it is what it is.
And we all make stereotypes and assumptions.
Right, and again, it's a part of interpreting your environment. There's certain, the brain likes patterns, and there are certain things that would kill you if you didn't recognize them as a continuing pattern. And so while, you know, I understand that, there's also the sense that there shouldn't be this surprise or awe when someone announces that they're from this place, when in your mind you think they should be from this place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the surprise and the awe that I think tends to make people uncomfortable, because when they look surprised, I don't I don't look surprised. I usually look a little bit irritated, and then there's that discomfort, because on my end, what's the surprise? We have people from all different races, cultures, ethnicities living in far-flung and different places. Why is it necessarily a surprise as opposed to, oh, cool, so,
Yeah.
you know, what brought you here?
Yeah.
You know,
Educate me, help me.
right. And I don't, unfortunately, you don't get as much of the, oh, that's so cool, why did you come here, live here? It's more of the, oh.
Or disbelief or challenge. Or,
Right,
yeah,
right, right.
We have to wrap up in just a second, but final word, what creates belonging for you?
Of a sense of family, a sense of friends, and a sense of being able to really fit into the community which you're in. So by fit, I mean in terms of your views on being active, religious views, socioeconomic status, all those things that play into being able to create a life for yourself.
Okay, awesome. We're going to have to leave it there, but I want to thank you so much for coming by, and I
No,
understand that
thank you.
in addition to your busy work schedule, you're also moving, which is never easy, but thank you so much for sharing your story with
You're
us.
welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's
You
been
bet.
a pleasure. Thank you, Alan.
You bet. And I think at the time you were in Beirut, correct?
I was in Beirut, and my mind couldn't really wrap around the idea that there is no public transportation.